absolutely no time to do this. Here we go with another project.
Today's video, Sean gets a promotion. We talk about some things that we could and should maybe not be doing. But the most important thing I was going to say before we get started with this thing is that the Then We Could Drive It shirts are available on MotionAutoTv.com. Limited supply. We're going to kind of do a pre-order thing, and then we're going to print them ourselves. We're going to print them in-house. So if you want it signed, you want anything like that, be sure to put it down in the order comments, and we'll be sure to do that. We are printing them ourselves, so they should be shipping out within about a week or so. And after that, after this run, we are never going to be doing that shirt again. If you want to win the 500 horsepower Sleeper Civic, MotionAutoTv.com. VIP membership, don't miss out, because I think we're going to be actually closing the VIP membership and then starting a giveaway on the 1st of May, and you will end up getting bonus entries and stuff for being a VIP member, but you won't be able to become a VIP member during that giveaway because we're closing it down. So should have grabbed those before the end of the month. That ends on April 30th. But yeah, let's get started with today's video.
We make the streams louder.
Alright guys, so in the last video, man, what did we even do in the last video?
So in the last video, I think we put the rear end of the Evo, the tail lights, the garnishes, the bumper, the hatch, saw that. We put the doors on it. We did a little bit of work on the interior. We got the motor out of this thing. We ran into the issue with the $80.
The boat anchor?
The boat anchor. The $80 clutch that we had in there that we don't want to use. And then I think you started to imply something with this little setup right here that we have no time for. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, but.
So in the last video, I've teased you guys with setting this K20. So this is a K20 Z3 out of like an Awd Civic SI, which has like, I think one of the better flowing K-series cylinder heads, or the K20 cylinder head at least. So it has the factory RBC intake manifold and K20 and just some other little stuff. Typically that engine comes with a 6-speed transmission with an LSD in it. As it sits, we really, like it took 2 minutes. We just stuffed this thing. It was already on a rolly cart up into the engine bay, and kind of teased you guys with it because I have always kind of thought about K-swapping an Evo. I've always thought that'd be really cool. And initially we did think about K-swapping just the Lancer wagon and making it all-wheel drive, like an all-wheel drive Lancer wagon with like an Evo front, and then it escalated to pretty much a full Evo wagon build swap that's kind of like OEM type spec, or at least, you know, has everything from the factory like an Evo wagon would. Again, like he called this thing the boat anchor. This engine is bad. Rod caps and everything were already off of it, spun bearings. So this engine does need rebuilt. But like I said, I would like to at least put in a little bit of effort towards the idea of K-swapping an Evo. I just think that would be hilarious. I looked all over the internet and I found one, and it was a really, really old post. I think the post was like almost 10 years old or something. And I don't know if it was all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive, but it was NA. So it was a K-Series NA, so no turbo, no nothing. The plan with this would be big dog, crazy stuff with like a dog box sequential or something like that with it. So I guess one of the debates that I'm having is whether we should use the Honda transmission or if we should use the Evo transmission. The engines are mounted in the engine bay the same exact way, so I hope that they spin the same way. If we took the Evo transmission, which I have the 6-speed transmission out of the wrecked car with a good bell housing on it, it's a cracked back half of it. So if we could bolt or make an adapter plate from a K-Series Honda to an Evo manual transmission, then everything bolts in here. The transmission has its mounts, it has a mount over here. Transfer case, you don't have to deal with any of that stuff. Whereas with the Honda all-wheel drive transfer case, it sits down really low, and I think it would go pretty much right where the steering rack is. So we would have to do a lot of modifications to try and make the K-Series OEM like all-wheel drive transmission fit in one of these. And then we would have to deal with like gearing and a viscous coupler, all kinds of stuff like that you typically have to do with a turbo Honda. So if you guys didn't know, I have this yellow all-wheel drive Civic right here. It has a K24, probably makes about 800 horsepower. We will get into a little update on this towards the end of the video. But for now, I want to bolt and like an OEM transmission on this thing. Actually, I want to stick this thing on one of those vane engine stands so it'll sit up a little bit taller, and then that will actually get it completely level, and we'll be able to move it around in the engine bay, whereas this thing's kind of sketchy and it just feels like it wants to fall off. We're gonna put this on one of those stands. We're gonna bolt this OEM transmission to it like the K-Series tranny, and then we're gonna stick this transmission up towards it and see how it looks together and see if it's see if this thing is even a possibility. And then I think we're gonna go drop this thing off at machine shop, basically an engine block and a transmission, and see about getting an adapter plate made. So
all the while we have absolutely no time to do this. Here we go with another project.
well, I mean that's what I do.
What's going on, buddy?
I don't think this is gonna work.
How come?
Well, I mean, I think it might work, but it would be sticking out of the hood. Like we'd have to like cut a hole in the hood, like you know the vent in the top. It would just be a K series sticking out of the top.
Yeah, look at that. Look at the difference in the size of the block and the size of the housing on the.
Well, and even the flywheel. Like, look how big that flywheel is. It's literally the outside radius of the bell housing of the Evo transmission.
Let's look it up.
And so how we did this is we have the shaft from the transmission actually inside of the clutch like hole, and I think actually the engine or the transmission could go up a little bit more. I think that would be okay, but yeah, look, we thought the broken bell housing was going to be an issue, but it's actually we need clearance for the starter.
Yeah,
Can you see in there?
A little bit. Not really.
Much.
Well, it's kind of zoomed in right now.
So that is the shaft in the transmission in there. It keeps wanting to focus, like not in there. That's the shaft. So the transmission should actually go up a little bit, but
even so, look at like where the starter is.
oh yeah, I mean look at the flywheel.
I
That's
think
the top of
you can make an adapter plate for it, but the issue is also the height of the. Look how high up the motor sticks from the because you'd have to utilize the factory transmission mount to get the transfer case and everything to sit where it needs to, and then make a mount for the motor accordingly. But if you'd have to get such a thick adapter plate to make it work.
Look at the 4G right there.
Yeah, tiny.
So it sits down way further.
Way further, yeah.
way further up on the block. No, maybe we'll have to measure that distance from the top of the bell housing to the top of that head.
But not even so much the motor height. My thing is that you're going to get such a big adapter plate to make it work with everything, so thick that how far over is the motor going? We need to take some measurements, how it is right now, from the side of the accessories to the end of the transmission housing, and see how much space we have in the engine bay. Because that's going to be an issue right there.
I mean, looking at it from right here, that looks beautiful. That looks like we could bolt her in and take it for a rip. But then when you really start looking at it, you say, uh-oh. And then the other issue we have is over here in the back, the transfer case. See how close the transfer case is to the block? That we would definitely run into some issues there with trying to even get that.
I don't know if it's feasible with
bolt.
this setup. Might have to run all Honda.
I mean, this makes the most sense if it would work, but then doing the Honda stuff. And I think the Honda stuff, I think that to build a Honda tranny, it's cheaper. Yeah. Using the viscous coupler.
You do the whole drive line and everything, you know, as opposed to
like this thing, it would have been like, all right, we make engine mounts and wire it up. The other thing, it's like the engine, transmission, axles, drive shaft, transfer case, everything, modifying the subframe, everything to try to even make this even a reality. So I know I'm going to send some pictures to the machine shop guy, see what he thinks of it, and decide if we're going to go drop it off over there or not.
We need to look at the transfer case and see how much room we have, if any, with the block.
See if it bolts.
Well,
grab the transfer case real quick. And
if we don't have any room with that, then it's honestly going to be a no-go with this transmission.
Unless we just cut up the block a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe we could just put a K-Series head.
On an Evo?
On an Evo.
Yeah.
That probably won't work. I'm not being serious. Part of the reason I would like to do this is because of how efficient and how good the Honda cylinder heads, and then their aluminum block versus cast iron block from like the 80s. This is from the 2000s.
So
we got
essentially, so this eyelet right here bolts right there.
To that?
So
or bolts right behind that?
Bolts behind that to the transmission.
Which we could cut this part of the block off.
Yeah, that really doesn't matter too much, I guess.
Maybe we could just weld everything together. We just weld the bell housing to the block.
Yeah. And just if something happens to it, we're screwed.
We'll just make sure we put a good clutch in there.
Up Shit's Creek, buddy.
And we'll just weld it.
Yeah.
It'll be good to go. I don't know. I think we got a dilemma.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to be as easy as we thought it was. I thought that like we were just going to. I thought we were going to throw 3 transmission bolts in it. The clutch was going to line up, and we were going to send it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I didn't think it was going to be that easy, but I thought that an adapter plate was definitely going to be an option, and I think it still could be an option. But the adapter plate would have to be probably a 1/2 inch thick to account for the flywheel, and then it would kind of have to neck down a little bit to give this some provisions to bolt, you know, or to at least set it back. Almost like it almost has to be like an adapter plate bell housing, like a little mini bell housing that's like an inch thick or something. But depending on how far that pushes over the engine, we might run in.
That's where the problem lies with the space we have, the width we have in the engine bay.
So we got some things to think about, or even if this is even a possibility, or if we should just can this. Maybe, I mean, obviously there's a reason that nobody's done this before.
I know what we should do. So we got number 6 on the list of my favorite things. We could really use that for this predicament. You guys want to check it out?
Oh, I forgot. We added this to the list. And
look at that. We can get Dave over here and get his opinion, because that's my 6th favorite thing. Dave's opinion.
What's up?
Hey, what are you doing?
Still at the junkyard.
The junkyard. Hey, I need some help. I need your opinion.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, on this K series to 4G63 adapter plate. Can you get over here, Stat?
Oh no, I'm busy. I mean, you just need an adapter plate.
Well, the bell like the flywheel for the K series is bigger than the bell housing on the Evo transmission.
Don't use the Evo transmission.
What
They're
Evo?
garbage.
Oh, geez. What do I use then?
Use a K series transmission.
Oh, then what do I do with the transfer case then?
Use an all-wheel drive one.
Then I have to make a new subframe, or should I just put a Honda subframe in here?
What are you talking about? You're gonna have to make mounts. Have mounts made anyway.
Yeah, but the transfer case goes right where like the steering rack and the subframe is.
Where does the Evo output shaft go? It should be in almost the exact same spot.
The Honda one is way lower, and the Evo one is higher. The Evo one goes more through like the transmission tunnel, and the Honda one goes like underneath, like down low, because it's meant to be in like a CRV. So it's interesting.
You could just raise the steering rack up
And modify the subframe. I mean, that's definitely an option.
because I'd rather do that and then just figure out what the gearing and or you could just use one of those couplers like you have in the Civic.
I'd probably do a coupler.
And you wouldn't have to worry about anything.
Yeah. This is revolutionary right here. There's a K-Series transmission bolted to a K-Series engine, and it bolts right up, even with the clutch and everything. So what we're going to do is lower this thing down, and kind of the transfer cases on these kind of go about right here, and they kind of go down and back. So we're going to stick it up in there. This engine will be kind of level because this is the vane engine stand. And so when I pull the engine out of my Honda over there for like the 10th time, you bolt this stand on it, lower it down, and then just unbolt the mounts, and then it just goes right out, and it's the same exact level and position that it actually is. So it's a really cool engine stand. So shout out to Vane Stands. They sent that thing out like a year ago, and I've got plenty of use out of it. So we're gonna see how it fits. All right, guys. So we have the engine sitting in the engine bay, kind of where it would have to go. And honestly, it looks like it would be kind of simple. Like we have the engine mount bracket right here. Make a bracket that comes down and bolts into this factory slot. Same thing over here with the transmission mount right there that bolts on and then just slides up here into this slot. Would probably have to be a custom, some sort of custom thing, but I think Garrett could make something like that. And then as far as the axles honestly look like they line up perfect with the engine sitting in here, and it almost looks like the engine sits lower in here than the case, or than the other series. So if we zoom in through this hole. Alright, so that is the axle shaft, and then that is the wheel. So I think the axles and everything wouldn't be that big of a deal. Maybe we'll see if like the Honda splines will go in here, and then we could end up making something like that. But the biggest issue I see right now will be the transfer case. So the transfer case kind of mounts to the bottom down there. I wish there was a way we could like suspend this up in the air and leave the engine in it, but we don't have that capabilities.
We won't just take a ratchet strap from this point to this point under the intake.
That strap would, this whole engine bay would taco probably trying to do that. But I mean, we could make this a front wheel drive Evo.
Easy.
Like really easy. Like we'd probably be running this weekend. But transfer case pretty much goes right here where all this stuff is. So that will be our issue if we did decide to use the Honda. So I don't know. we have some options. We cut the heck out of the block, try to figure out how to get this Evo transmission and everything to mount on there, or we maybe we could even go with like an older style Evo transmission, like an Evo 5 to an Evo 6 or 4 to 6. I think the transfer cases are a lot different on there, so that might be an option for getting the getting the stuff to work. So I don't know, lots of options. Sean is working on some bodywork on the fenders over here, but that's not what this video is about. We're kind of talking about the K-Series thing. So we went ahead and got this thing pulled out of there. Kind of decided that, right now is not the best time to be messing with that, doing some other stuff. We have a lot of stuff to get done. Obviously working on the Evo wagon, and I would like to move on and talk about this thing. But before we do that, we're gonna have a little ceremony over here because Sean actually got promoted today.
I'm the shop foreman, boys. Are you excited?
Sean is now the shop foreman, and he's in charge of organization around here. So, so everybody, we need to give Sean's gonna do his curtsy. Yep. So Sean is now shop foreman, and if things are unorganized and he can't find them, or if Blake can't find them, or if I can't find them, it's his fault because he's the shop foreman.
Yeah.
So what do you like that?
I love it. Excited.
But anyhow, moving.
I'm not sure. That tells me that.
The shop foreman.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have a silver Sharpie. We could write on that one.
Let's do it right now.
All right. Well, getting over to this thing. So you guys have not seen this. I don't know what it is. If it's 700 horsepower, if it's 1,000 horsepower. It is my yellow K-Series all-wheel drive Honda Civic. This thing has some JE Pro Series pistons in it, some Wiseco boost line rods, valve springs and retainers, stock cams. It's got this Garrett G42 1200 compact turbo. It's a 73 mil turbo. It's capable of 1,200 horsepower. And again, last time we had it out, it was on 38 pounds of boost. But if you look in the engine bay, it's got this little bit of dust. But what it was actually doing was pushing coolant out of it into the overflow over here. So as soon as you'd get into 20 plus pounds of boost, it would shoot coolant out of here or out of the little, out of the little overflow stuff. We did have an instance at the track where it was building cooling pressure, and then actually the very, very last run of the season at the track, I think the day maybe when it ran its fastest pass, so it lost oil pressure. I do not think that it actually lost oil pressure, but the sensor is mounted to the block down there, so the sensor is tied to the ECU master, and I had a oil pressure protection on there, so it shut down half track. And so since then, I have not replaced the oil pressure sensor. I have started this once and moved it out of the trailer and into the shop, but that is kind of the update with it. I do not think that it actually lost oil pressure because it would have squeaked and made a bunch of weird noises, and it sounds just fine. But sometimes when you're running an oil pressure sensor tied kind of directly into the block, the vibrations kill the sensors. And this engine has been in there for about 2 years with that sensor on it too, making a bunch of, really, really crazy high RPM passes with lots of vibrations and stuff. So yeah, that is the update with this thing. I feel like I need to go ahead and pull off the head and throw a fresh head gasket on it with some new valve stem seals and stuff with it as well, because it does smoke a little bit after it's, when it first starts or whatever. So it has the SuperTech valve stem seals in it, not the OEM ones, which is kind of an issue. I've heard of a lot of people that, they put them in and like as soon as they first start the car, it has issues with valve stem seals. So I'm assuming that's kind of what is wrong with this. So we need to pull the head off of this thing, but that is the update for this thing. The transmission is great. Turbo is awesome. We did replace the turbo after it did eat that vacuum line at the ice cream cruise. But yeah, this whole setup has been super solid other than random little issues since we got the forged engine built. Eventually, I would like to do like a sleeved block and actually turn this thing up a little bit crazier. As of now, we're gonna put it back together. Kind of how this is. The other thing that we need to do is mess with the intercooler setup. So Dave was messing with a kind of a magical watered air setup on this thing, but we have not got that dialed in yet. So I think I might end up going like a center feed manifold and then get a smaller radiator and then the big giant like 6-inch core that goes in the front. Definitely need to bring this thing back. It's been kind of on the back burner just due to all the other projects and stuff that we have. If you guys would like to win our 500 horsepower sleeper Civic, go grab a VIP membership on MotionAutoTv.com. And again, we do have the Then We Could Drive It shirt for the Evo wagon. is live on the website now too, so go check that out. We're doing limited quantities, and I think we're cutting off the orders on Monday, and we're not going to reprint that shirt. So appreciate you guys watching, appreciate the support, and we'll see you guys in the next one. How much value does that have? I was trying to get your opinion, but
well, there you go. That's my opinion.